I was standing in the kitchen, my hands trembling so badly that I almost dropped the cup of tea. My husband, Peter, was in the living room, speaking in low tones to our son-in-law, Jacob. I could barely hear their words, but the sight in front of me only moments before still burned in my mind. I had walked in without knocking. The air was thick, and my heart almost stopped. My husband was holding Jacob's face in his hands, whispering something I couldn't hear. And then I saw the tiny bump under Jacob's shirt. Not a big one, but enough to make me gasp. Jacob was pregnant. The words didn't make sense even inside my own head. Pregnant. And my husband was the father. For a moment, I thought I had lost my mind. How could this be? How could my husband betray me in the strangest, most twisted way possible? I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come out. My eyes met Peter's, and instead of guilt, I saw something else, coldness. And that's when I realized something else. The headaches I'd been having, the weakness, the strange metallic taste in my mouth, it wasn't stress. It wasn't age. He had been poisoning me. I staggered back, gripping the doorframe, and the truth hit me so hard that it almost knocked me over. Peter wanted me gone. He wanted Jacob and the baby. But if Peter thought I was weak, he was about to learn a lesson. I would make him regret it. I had my revenge all planned out in my head. And it would start, tonight. But before I could even take my first step toward him, something happened that changed everything. It all began months earlier, when life still felt normal, or at least, I thought it was normal. Back then, my home was filled with laughter. My daughter, Emily, had just married Jacob. I liked him right from the start. He was polite, kind, and seemed to truly love Emily. Peter, my husband of 38 years, was quieter. He never liked strangers, and I thought his coldness toward Jacob was just him being protective. Our little town was peaceful. Most days, I spent my time baking pies, tending to my rose garden, and waiting for Emily to visit. Peter spent a lot of time running errands or fixing things in the shed. I never questioned it. After all, he was the kind of man who could fix anything. One sunny afternoon, Emily came over alone. She seemed tired. Her face was pale, and I thought maybe she and Jacob had been arguing. She brushed it off and said Jacob had been busy helping a friend move. Over the next few weeks, though, I noticed Jacob coming around more often, sometimes without Emily. He'd stop by to pick up something for Emily or borrow tools from Peter. Each time, Peter's mood seemed lighter. He'd smile more, even laugh, but only when Jacob was around. At first, I thought it was sweet. Maybe Peter was finally warming up to him. But then I started noticing the way Jacob avoided meeting my eyes when I entered the room. One evening, after dinner, I went to make tea. As I reached for the sugar jar, I noticed the lid was slightly loose. I didn't think much of it until I caught a faint, strange smell, bitter, chemical-like. My stomach churned. I decided not to use it. That same night, I had the worst headache of my life. Peter handed me a cup of tea and insisted I drink it. I did, but it only made things worse. My heart pounded, my vision blurred, and I went to bed early. The next morning, I told Peter about my symptoms. He acted concerned, but I caught a flicker in his eyes, a flicker that felt wrong. Weeks passed, and my health kept getting worse. My hands would shake, my legs felt weak, and sometimes I'd forget simple things like where I put my keys. I told myself it was just getting older. But deep inside, I felt something wasn't right. The day everything changed was a rainy Tuesday. Emily had called to say she couldn't visit because she had a cold. That afternoon, I heard voices in the shed. It was Peter and Jacob. I couldn't make out their words, but I heard Jacob laughing, a soft, nervous laugh. When I pushed the door open, they both froze. Jacob quickly zipped up his jacket, and Peter stepped in front of him like he was shielding him. I saw it then, just a glimpse, the slight swell under Jacob's shirt. My brain refused to accept it at first. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, every piece of the puzzle clicking into place. Peter's strange mood changes. Jacob's nervousness. My mysterious illness. By morning, I was sure. Peter had been slowly poisoning me, and he had gotten Jacob pregnant. I knew then, this wasn't just betrayal. This was war. The first step was to survive. If I was going to get revenge, I needed my strength back. I started secretly throwing away the tea Peter gave me, pouring it into the sink when he wasn't looking. I ate only food I prepared myself. Slowly, the headaches began to fade. But Peter must have noticed. Because one night, I woke up to find him standing by my bed, holding something in his hand. Peter was standing there in the dark, the faint glow from the streetlight outside outlining his figure. His hand was clenched around something small, shiny, almost metallic. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought he might hear it. "What are you doing?" I whispered, my voice tight. He froze, then stepped back, sliding the object into his pocket. "You were tossing in your sleep." "I came to check on you," he said, his voice low and smooth. Too smooth. But I had been married to him long enough to know when he was lying. I reached for the lamp on the bedside table, but he quickly stepped forward and turned it off again. "Don't. Go back to sleep," he said, his tone sharpening. That was when I realized something chilling. Peter never came into our bedroom at night anymore. For the past year, he'd been sleeping in the guest room because of his back problems. The fact that he was here now, watching me in the dark, made my skin crawl. I pretended to close my eyes, breathing evenly until he left. My mind raced. That metallic object in his hand. I was sure it was a small bottle. Poison, maybe. Or pills he was planning to slip into my drink in the morning. The next day, I searched the guest room. I went through drawers, the closet, even under the mattress. That's when I found it, a little brown medicine bottle with no label, hidden inside an old sock. When I opened it, a sharp chemical smell filled my nose. I quickly screwed the cap back on, my hands shaking. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew it wasn't medicine. At that moment, I knew I couldn't just sit and wait for him to succeed. I needed to take control before he took everything from me. But there was one thing still gnawing at me, Jacob. I needed to understand how he ended up pregnant, and why Peter seemed so protective over him. 2 days later, I got my chance. Emily had gone to visit her friend out of town, and Jacob stopped by to drop off some tools. Peter wasn't home. "Jacob," I said, blocking the door before he could leave. "We need to talk." He looked nervous, glancing toward the driveway as if expecting Peter to appear any second. "I'm worried about you," I said softly. "Anne." "I know." His face drained of color. "Know what?" "That you're pregnant. And that Peter is the father." He stared at me for a long time, then his shoulders slumped. Tears filled his eyes. "I didn't want this," he whispered. "I didn't know how to stop it." His voice was trembling. He told me Peter had started helping him with odd jobs after Emily married him. At first, it was just friendly advice. Then, Peter became more controlling, telling Jacob when to come over, what to wear, even what to eat. One night, Jacob had felt dizzy after drinking tea Peter gave him. When he woke up, he was in Peter's bed. He tried to avoid him afterward, but Peter threatened to ruin his marriage to Emily. And then Jacob found out, he was pregnant. By the time Jacob finished talking, I was gripping the edge of the table so hard my knuckles were white. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to run straight to Peter and end this. But instead, I forced myself to stay calm. "Jacob," I said, my voice steady, "we're going to stop him. But you have to trust me." He nodded, wiping his face. That night, I began to plan. The first step was to make Peter believe I was still getting weaker. I went back to pretending to drink his tea, letting him think the poison was working. All the while, I was getting stronger, gathering every bit of information I could. But then, something unexpected happened. One rainy afternoon, Emily showed up at my door with a strange look on her face. "Mom," she said, "there's something you need to know about Jacob." Before she could say more, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway made us both turn toward the window. It was Peter. And Jacob was in the passenger seat. Both of them were soaked from the rain, but they were holding hands. Peter stepped into the house first, his boots dripping water onto the rug. Jacob followed behind him, his head slightly lowered, but his hands still caught in Peter's like a child holding on to a parent, or something else entirely. Emily's eyes narrowed. "What is going on here?" she demanded. Peter looked from her to me, and then to Jacob, before giving a crooked smile. "Nothing you need to worry about. Jacob and I just went for a drive." "In the middle of a storm?" Emily shot back. Jacob didn't speak. He just stood there, avoiding her gaze, his free hand resting protectively over his small but noticeable bump. Emily's eyes dropped to his stomach, and I saw the exact moment she realized. Her face went pale. "No," she whispered. "No. Jacob, tell me it's not what I think it is." Jacob opened his mouth, but Peter's grip on his hand tightened, and he said firmly, "Emily, that's enough." My daughter's voice shook. "Is it yours? Is that why you've been acting so strange, Dad?" The room felt frozen. Even the rain outside seemed to hush. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Peter finally released Jacob's hand and stepped toward Emily. "You're upset. You need to calm down before you say something you'll regret." "I don't need to calm down." Emily's voice broke. "I need the truth." Jacob's lips trembled. He glanced at me for a split second, long enough for me to see the silent plea in his eyes. He wanted to tell her, but fear held him back. Peter turned to me, his jaw tight. "Margaret, tell her to stop." I met his gaze, and for the first time in our marriage, I didn't obey. "No, Peter. You tell her." The silence that followed was heavy and dangerous. Peter's eyes darkened. "Fine. You want the truth? Jacob and I are having a child together." Emily staggered back as if he'd slapped her. Her hand flew to her mouth, tears already spilling down her cheeks. "How could you, both of you?" She shook her head. "You're my father." "You're supposed to," she stopped herself, choking on her words. Jacob reached for her, but she pulled away. "Don't touch me." Peter stepped in front of Jacob, shielding him like he always did. "Enough. We're not discussing this any further tonight." Emily turned and ran out into the rain. I started to go after her, but Peter's voice cut through the air. "Stay." I froze. Not because I wanted to obey him, but because I knew, if I pushed him now, something dangerous might happen. Instead, I watched Emily disappear into the darkness, my heart aching, my mind spinning. Peter locked the door behind her. Then he turned to Jacob. "Go to the guest room. I'll be there soon." That was the moment my stomach twisted into knots. I had always suspected they were still involved, but seeing him send Jacob to the guest room like that confirmed it. When Jacob left, Peter stepped closer to me, his voice low. "You've been meddling, Margaret. I don't like it." I held my ground. "And you've been poisoning me." His smile was slow, cruel. "If you knew that, why are you still here?" "Because I'm not finished," I said, my voice steady. Something flickered in his eyes, something almost like amusement. "Careful. You don't know how far I'm willing to go." I didn't answer. I just watched as he walked away, his footsteps heavy on the wooden floor. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me jump. I kept thinking about Emily, somewhere out there in the storm, and about Jacob, trapped in whatever twisted control Peter had over him. By morning, Emily hadn't called. The phone sat on the table, silent. I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I put on my coat and boots, ready to go find her. But when I stepped outside, I froze. There, on the porch, was a small cardboard box. Inside was Emily's wedding ring. And a note in Peter's handwriting that read, "Don't go looking for her." My fingers went cold as I held the box. The rain from the night before had soaked through the cardboard, making it soft and fragile, but the ring inside was still gleaming, mocking me with its perfect shine. Emily never took off her wedding ring. Ever. I read the note again, the letters sharp and deliberate, "Don't go looking for her." For a moment, the world around me seemed to fade. The morning air was heavy, and my own breath felt trapped in my chest. Peter had done something. I didn't know what yet, but my bones told me it was bad. I stepped back into the house and shut the door quietly. I didn't want him to hear me thinking. Jacob was in the kitchen, staring into a mug of tea like it might tell him the future. His eyes were red, his hair uncombed. "Where's Emily?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He blinked at me, his mouth opening and closing like he couldn't decide whether to speak. I don't know." I stepped closer. "Jacob, if you know where she is, you need to tell me now." His gaze darted toward the hallway that led to the guest room where Peter was. That was answer enough. "Jacob," I said softly, "listen to me. I can help you. But if you stay silent, Peter will destroy both of us. And the baby." At the mention of the baby, his lips trembled. He looked at me with something between fear and desperation. "I didn't want any of this," he whispered. He told me if I didn't do what he said, something bad would happen to Emily." My stomach twisted. "And now she's gone." Jacob swallowed hard. He told me not to ask questions. That was all I needed to hear. I decided I had to act fast. If Peter was willing to poison me, get Jacob pregnant, and now possibly hurt our daughter, there was no telling what he would do next. I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door. "Stay here," I told Jacob. "No matter what happens, keep the door locked." But before I could leave, the sound of heavy footsteps came from the hallway. Peter appeared, his face unreadable. "Going somewhere?" I forced a smile. "Just into town. We need milk." He studied me for a long moment, then stepped aside. "Don't be long." My heart pounded as I got into the car. The first place I went was Emily's house. The front door was locked, and her car was in the driveway. Inside, the blinds were drawn. I knocked and called her name. No answer. I circled around the back, where the sliding glass door was slightly open. That's when I noticed something that made my skin prickle, a muddy boot print on the patio. Too big to be Emily's, and not the type Jacob usually wore. I slid the door open slowly, stepping into the kitchen. The house was silent, but not empty. I could feel it, the way you can tell when someone's nearby, even if you can't see them. I checked the living room. Empty. The hallway. Empty. Then I opened the bedroom door. The bed was unmade, and there was a small smear of blood on the pillow. Not much. Just enough to make my chest tighten. In the corner of the room, I spotted something that stopped me cold. It was Emily's scarf, the one she wore yesterday, tied in a tight knot around the leg of the bed frame. Before I could process what it meant, the floorboard behind me creaked. I turned slowly. Peter was standing in the doorway. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I told you not to look for her." I took a step back, my hand brushing against the dresser, searching for anything heavy I could use if I had to defend myself. Where is she? I demanded. Peter tilted his head. Safe. For now. But you're becoming a problem. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. The sound of the latch clicking felt like a lock on my own heartbeat. My mind raced. I could scream, but no one would hear me in time. I could run, but he was blocking the door. Then I remembered there was something heavy in the nightstand drawer. I lunged for it, yanking the drawer open. My fingers closed around the cold metal, just as Peter grabbed my arm. Peter's grip was like iron, his fingers digging into my arm as he tried to wrench me away from the nightstand. Let go. I shouted, my voice raw. He didn't. Instead, he yanked me backward, sending the drawer slamming shut. The heavy object inside, my only chance at a weapon, was now out of reach. You don't get it, Margaret, he said through clenched teeth. You've already lost. My mind was racing. If I couldn't get the weapon, I had to get away. I stomped down hard on his foot. He grunted and loosened his grip just enough for me to twist free. I bolted toward the open sliding door, the rain from earlier still dripping off the eaves outside. But Peter was faster. He grabbed me from behind, wrapping one arm around my chest, the other around my neck. For a terrifying moment, the room spun. His breath was hot and sour against my ear. You're ruining everything, he hissed. Where is Emily? I managed to choke out. He didn't answer. Instead, he dragged me back into the bedroom, shoving me toward the bed. My legs hit the mattress, and I fell backward. He reached into his pocket, and that's when I saw it. The same small brown bottle I'd found hidden in the guest room. He held it up between two fingers. This will make all your problems go away, he said, his tone almost gentle. My stomach turned. I knew what that bottle meant. If he got it into me, I wouldn't wake up. I needed a distraction. My eyes darted around the room, searching for anything I could use. That's when I saw Emily's scarf still tied to the bed frame. Peter, I said, forcing my voice to shake, please, just tell me where she is. I won't fight you. He smirked, like he thought he'd already won. She's somewhere Jacob can't find her. And neither can you. While his attention was on my face, my hand shot out and grabbed the scarf. I yanked hard, pulling the bed frame toward me with a loud screech. The noise startled him just enough. I kicked upward with all my strength, my foot catching him square in the stomach. He stumbled back, the bottle flying out of his hand and rolling under the dresser. I scrambled off the bed, diving for the sliding door again. This time, I made it outside. My feet splashed in puddles as I ran toward the car, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. But as I reached for the driver's door, a figure stepped out from behind the hedge. It was Jacob. He was pale, rain-soaked, and breathing hard, but he wasn't alone. Behind him stood Emily. Her wrists were bound with rope, her hair tangled and wet. She looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. Before I could move toward her, Jacob raised a hand. Wait. We need to talk. For a moment, I couldn't move. The rain pelted my face, my hands shook, and my mind was trying to piece together why Jacob, the man I thought was as much a victim as Emily, was standing there with her bound and silent. Jacob, I said slowly, my voice breaking. What are you doing? He glanced over his shoulder nervously, as if expecting Peter to burst out of the house any second. Then he stepped toward me, lowering his voice. We don't have much time. You need to listen. Emily tried to speak, but the rope around her wrists was tight, and I could see her jaw clenching like she was holding back tears. I took a step forward, my protective instincts boiling over. Untie her. Now. Jacob hesitated, his hand twitching toward the knot. I will, he said, but you have to understand. I didn't bring her here because I wanted to hurt her. My voice hardened. You're doing a good job of it anyway. He shook his head. You think Peter controls me completely, but he doesn't. Not anymore. I know what he's been doing to you. And to me. And to her. That's why I came. I stared at him, my mind a whirl of suspicion and hope. Then why is she tied up? Jacob's voice dropped to a whisper. Because if she runs, Peter will notice she's gone before I can get her somewhere safe. Emily's eyes flared. Safe? You mean away from you, she snapped, her voice hoarse from crying. Jacob's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, handing it to me. It was a photograph. The image was grainy, taken in dim light, but I could see Peter. He was standing next to a man I didn't recognize, shaking hands. Between them, on the table, was a large bundle of cash. And in the background, was Emily's wedding ring. My chest tightened. What is this? Jacob looked me dead in the eyes. Peter sold her. The words punched the air out of my lungs. Emily froze, staring at him like she couldn't believe it. Sold me? What are you talking about? Jacob swallowed hard. The man in that picture, he's not from around here. He's dangerous. Peter told me if I didn't give him what he wanted, he'd give you to that man instead. Emily's face went pale. And what he wanted was you. Jacob didn't answer. He didn't need to. The rain was falling harder now, making it harder to think. I glanced toward the house. If Peter noticed all three of us were outside, this would turn into something ugly fast. Untie her, I said again, more firmly this time. Jacob nodded and worked at the knot until the rope fell away. Emily rubbed her wrists, stepping quickly to my side. We have to go, she said urgently. Right now. But Jacob shook his head. If you leave now, he'll come after you. You have to let me handle him first. I was torn. Every instinct told me not to trust him, but the look in his eyes wasn't the same vacant, fearful stare I'd seen before. This was different. Determined. What are you planning to do? I asked. Before he could answer, the front door of the house slammed open. Peter was standing there, rain soaking his shirt, his eyes locked on us. And in his hand, was a shotgun. The rain blurred everything for a moment, except for the black, gleaming barrel of the shotgun pointed straight at us. Peter's voice was low but carried over the storm. Nobody moves. Emily instinctively pressed herself against me. Jacob stepped in front of both of us, his hands raised. Peter, you don't have to do this. Peter's lip curled. Don't tell me what I have to do. You think I don't know what you're up to, Jacob? I saw you untie her. Jacob took a slow step forward. You've already done enough. Let them go. Peter's eyes flicked to me. Margaret, I told you not to go looking for her. You couldn't follow one simple rule. You poisoned me, I shot back, my voice shaking but loud enough to cut through the rain. You lied to me for years. And now you've dragged our daughter and her husband into this mess. I'm done listening to you. For the first time, his gaze faltered, but only for a second. Then his grip on the gun tightened. You're not leaving this property. Jacob inched closer. Peter, if you shoot, there's no going back. Peter's jaw twitched. There was no going back the moment you got pregnant. Emily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. I could see the storm in her eyes, not from the rain, but from the weight of the truth hitting her all over again. I needed to think fast. If I could distract him for even 2 seconds, Jacob might be able to grab the gun. So I did something I'd never done in nearly 4 decades of marriage. I spat in his face. Peter flinched, just enough. Jacob lunged, grabbing the barrel of the shotgun and shoving it upward. A deafening blast split the air, and the recoil sent both men stumbling. Emily screamed. I grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the car. But Peter recovered quicker than I expected. He wrenched the shotgun from Jacob's hands and swung the butt of it into his shoulder, sending him sprawling into the mud. Peter turned the barrel back toward us. Get away from the car. Emily froze. I stepped in front of her, my pulse pounding so loud I could barely hear my own voice. If you're going to shoot, then do it. But you'll have to look your daughter in the eyes when you do. For the first time, Peter's hands trembled, just slightly. His finger hovered over the trigger. That was when Jacob, still on the ground, grabbed a rock and hurled it with everything he had. It struck Peter in the side of the head. He staggered, the gun slipping from his hands and clattering onto the wet ground. I didn't think, I just dove for it. My fingers closed around the cold metal. I stood up, my hand shaking as I pointed it at him. Peter wiped the blood from his temple, staring at me with something between disbelief and rage. You wouldn't, he said. I met his eyes. Try me. For a long, tense moment, none of us moved. The rain poured down, soaking through my clothes, running into my eyes. Then Peter smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. You're still not strong enough to finish this. Before I could respond, the sound of an engine roared from the road. Headlights cut through the storm. A dark SUV pulled into the driveway, tires spraying mud. The driver's door opened, and out stepped the man from Jacob's photograph. The man stepped out slowly, like he had all the time in the world, rain slicking back his dark hair. He wore a black leather jacket, the kind that looked heavy enough to make him unbothered by the cold. His eyes swept over the scene, Peter bleeding at the temple, Jacob on the ground, Emily trembling beside me, and me holding the shotgun. Then he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Looks like I showed up just in time, he said in a voice deep enough to cut through the rain. Peter straightened, wiping the blood from his face. You're early, he said, almost casually, as though they were business partners meeting for lunch. I got impatient, the man replied, taking a few slow steps toward us. Where is she? Peter's eyes flicked toward Emily. That was all the answer the man needed. Emily's grip on my arm tightened. Mom, who is that? She whispered. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I was too busy keeping the shotgun pointed between Peter and the stranger, unsure which one was the bigger threat at the moment. The man looked me over, then smirked. You must be Margaret. I've heard a lot about you. I can't say the same, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Peter took a step toward him, his tone low but urgent. You'll get her, but not here. Too many eyes. The man's smile faded. That wasn't the deal. You said she'd be ready when I arrived. Jacob struggled to his feet, his voice shaking. You're not taking her anywhere. The man turned his gaze on Jacob and laughed. You must be the husband. Or, maybe not just the husband, huh? His eyes flicked down to Jacob's stomach with a knowing grin. Jacob's fists clenched, but he didn't move. Peter glanced at me. Put the gun down, Margaret. You're making things worse. No, I said flatly. The stranger tilted his head, like he was studying me. You know, Peter told me you were stubborn. He said you'd never listen. That's why he had to make other arrangements. Something in the way he said it made my blood run cold. Arrangements for what? I demanded. The man's smile returned, but this time it was crueler. For when you were gone. The rain hammered down harder, and the world seemed to shrink to just the five of us standing in that muddy driveway. Then, without warning, the man reached inside his jacket. I tightened my grip on the shotgun, my finger hovering over the trigger. He pulled out a pistol. Emily screamed. Jacob moved in front of her. Peter didn't even flinch. Put it down, I warned, trying to sound like I was in control, even though my heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear my own voice. The man smirked. How about you put yours down first? Nobody moved. The rain pounded. My arms ached from holding the gun so tightly. Then, from somewhere down the road, the faint sound of another engine grew louder. Headlights cut through the fog and rain. The stranger's smirk vanished. Peter's eyes widened. The new vehicle turned into the driveway, and when the door opened, a uniformed police officer stepped out. The officer stepped out into the rain, his boots splashing in the mud. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and wore that kind of calm expression that said he'd seen trouble before and wasn't afraid of it. His hand rested casually on the holster at his hip. Evening, he said, his voice steady. Someone want to tell me what's going on here? For a second, no one spoke. The rain seemed to grow louder, drumming against the car roofs, the house, the ground beneath our feet. Peter was the first to break the silence. Officer, this is just a family disagreement. Nothing you need to be concerned about. The stranger with the pistol smiled faintly, but his eyes stayed locked on me. The officer's gaze shifted between us, lingering on the shotgun in my hands and the pistol in the stranger's. A family disagreement with firearms involved? His tone was calm, but there was steel beneath it. I'm going to need both of you to put your weapons down. Now. I didn't move. This man, I said, nodding toward the stranger, came here to take my daughter. My husband's been poisoning me and... That's enough, Peter snapped, stepping forward. The officer raised his hand. Sir, step back. Peter froze, but his eyes burned into mine. The stranger chuckled. You're all making this a lot more complicated than it needs to be. Drop it, the officer said again, more firmly this time. The stranger glanced at Peter, then back at the officer. You really want to get involved in something that's bigger than you? I'm already involved, the officer replied. For a long moment, it was a standoff. The rain, the tension, the way everyone's breath came fast and shallow, it felt like the whole world was holding still. Then, Jacob moved. Quick as lightning, he grabbed a fistful of mud from the ground and hurled it straight into the stranger's eyes. The man cursed, stumbling back and wiping at his face. The pistol tilted upward. I didn't think. I stepped forward and swung the butt of the shotgun hard into his wrist. The pistol fell into the mud. The officer rushed in, pinning the man to the ground with one knee and yanking his arms behind his back. You're under arrest, he said, his voice even but forceful. Peter didn't move. His eyes flicked from the stranger being cuffed to me still holding the shotgun. Put it down, Margaret, the officer ordered gently. I finally lowered it, my arms aching. Peter took a step toward me, but the officer's partner, a second officer I hadn't even noticed getting out of the patrol car, moved to block him. Sir, you're going to need to come with us, too, the second officer said. Peter's jaw clenched. On what grounds? I found my voice again. On the grounds of attempted murder, unlawful confinement, and whatever else you've done that we don't even know about yet. The first officer looked at me, then at Emily and Jacob. We'll get statements from all of you. But for now, you're safe. Safe. The word felt strange in my ears, like it didn't belong to me yet. Peter was led to the patrol car, his eyes never leaving mine. There was no remorse in them, only a cold promise. As the cars drove away, Emily wrapped her arms around me. She was trembling, but she was alive. Jacob stood a few feet away, holding his swollen stomach, looking like he'd aged years in a single night. We didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. The storm finally began to break, the rain easing into a light drizzle. But I knew it wasn't over. Because men like Peter don't disappear quietly. And I wasn't done with him yet. 3 days later, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, until I saw the message. You think it's over? Check your back porch. My heart slammed against my ribs. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by the bed and crept to the kitchen, every floorboard creak sounding like a gunshot in my ears. When I slid the back door open, the cold morning air rushed in, along with the sight that made my stomach drop. A small glass bottle sat neatly on the porch step. The same kind Peter had used to poison me. Tied to it was a note. For Jacob's next meal. Well, my dears, that's where we end today's tale. But you and I both know, some stories never really end. If you enjoyed tonight's twist and you want to hear what happens next, make sure you click that subscribe button and ring the little bell, so you don't miss a single word. I'll be here, waiting, with another story to keep you on the edge of your seat. Until then, stay curious, stay safe, and stay listening.